1. I'll be the first to say that this isn't some life-destroying, pride-obliterating bitch slap of an MC. But at the time, it felt like it to me, so I'm sharing. I work as a route driver in the beverage delivery industry, mainly targeting bars and convenience stores. Needless to say, after years of doing this, I've run into more examples of the Peter principle than I can count. It seems like everyone has one. That one manager who is either too trashy, too bitchy, or too incompetent to rise into the upper echelons of regional management. After 15 years of lording over their sad little gas station kingdom, they've become frustrated, nitpicky, bitter, and downright bitchy towards their staff and customers. 'Cause what else are they gonna do? Recently, one of our district competitors absorbed another smaller local distributor, and as a result, ended up biting off a little more than they could chew. Too many new deliveries, and too many new products made the skeleton crew they had run for years all but collapse. Seasoned drivers who I've known and worked alongside for years began dropping like flies. As a result, the company began hiring anything with a pulse and a commercial driver's license. Coolers started becoming messy as product wasn't condensed, was being put in the wrong spot, or just left on the floor entirely. Well, last Tuesday rolls around, and it is once again my time to endure the weekly 30 minutes of hell. I roll up to the gas station and truck in my 5 carts worth of product. As always, Karen's totally displeased with the order that the salesman placed and she okayed just yesterday, so I endure the requisite 5 minutes of bitching while she checks the order in. I'm wheeling the first cart away after the check-in when I hear Karen's shrill voice come cracking through the cooler door.
"Clean up your shit! I have inventory tomorrow!"
I've been doing this for years, and I take great pride in my work and customer service. I am super anal about organization and product rotation, and I've developed quite the reputation amongst my customers as the one guy that you don't have to babysit. Everyone but Karen agrees. I get in and get out, my drinks are condensed and organized by product and expiration date. I cut no corners. Well, on this day I had a small order, was running a bit ahead of schedule, so after putting all my product away, I spent another 20 minutes or so cleaning and organizing the other guy's mountain of product. By the time I was done, I had amassed a huge stack of broken down cardboard and shrink wrap from all the product he had haphazardly thrown on the shelf. I was somehow able to cram all this trash into one box that I myself had brought in and headed out. Of course, Karen is there waiting in the back room while she does her reviews for the upcoming inventory.
"Geez, took you long enough."
"Yeah, I took a bit of time cleaning and organizing your cooler, but it looks good in there."
"Well, it better after all the time you spent in there. I've been waiting on you. I still have to do my cooler reviews."
I toss a box full of cardboard on the pile by the back door and start heading out.
Excuse me? Company policy says you have to take your own trash out."
No, I'm not a spiteful guy. Quite the opposite, actually. I'm usually quite chipper and polite. Something about her smugness and lack of appreciation finally just made me snap. I turn around, walk to the trash pile, grab the box full of cardboard, and without breaking eye contact, I turn it over and vigorously shake its contents all over the floor. Cardboard and shrink wrap went everywhere. I had really packed that shit in there, and it took a bit of effort to get it all out. This is the only box I brought in, and you should know you scanned it in. The other shit is your trash I cleaned up in your cooler. Have a good day." The combined look of rage and smugness on her face as I walked by with a shit-eating grin was enough to make the rest of my day. I told my boss about it when I got back at the end of the day. He got a good chuckle out of it, since everyone else hates her as well. Of course she called and complained, but of course my boss only responded with, "Well, he did what you told him to, nothing I can do about it. Sorry." I love my company. 2. I'm going to have to be a little bit vague in some details to protect myself here, so I can't discuss the type of business, etc., so it's going to be a struggle. This is a lot of background to explain the kind of situation that developed over a decade. A place that was once truly fun to work at and easy to earn a bit of extra overtime became a dog-eat-dog struggle to survive. The low-level peons like me were split between those who felt disenfranchised and hated the management, those that were basically looking for an escape route, and that group of snakes who would sit and smile in your face and act sympathetic to your situation before sneaking away to inform your managers of anything they had learned which might have value. We were in a specific area of the business that was isolated and slowly being replaced by technology. So from over 1,000 in our building, it dropped to just around 250 when I left. Most of this was done through voluntary redundancy, but the managers were given incentive to fire as many as possible to save money on VR. And since manager jobs were also slowly being cut, they were desperate to fire as many as possible, but most were incapable of following procedure. Mike was that intelligent and brutal kind of manager who, like the others, had been promoted into the position, but knowing he wouldn't get trained officially, took it upon himself to become competent. The man had gotten dozens of people fired directly and more indirectly by helping less competent managers follow the correct procedure. A certain quantity of work at a certain level of quality was required, which everyone met. Yet they had a bottom and top 10 list, and if you were on the bottom 10 list, your job was on the line regardless if you met the basic requirements. Since there were always a bottom 10 by definition, there were always 10 people on the firing line. This might be vague, but it has to be. Mike's team was a sort of clearinghouse for the bottom 10. We were shifted between shifts and teams for various reasons, but what I quickly learned is that somehow the shift's bottom 10 were all on Mike's team. Now, my performance was consistently in the top 10, so I was safe on that count, but my attendance was low due to health issues, and my attitude was really bad. I also learned that the rest of the team was made up of people who weren't low in performance, but had low attendance and attitude problems just like me. And we had all been on the chopping block by managers who failed to follow procedure. In short, Mike was the executioner of the workforce. The most vulnerable to being fired were shifted around to his team, so he could succeed where the others had failed. Sooner or later my time came, and I had a series of absences while I had hospitalizations, and Mike pounced into action. In the space of a year, he made 7 attempts to fire me, and each time I involved HR, who stepped in and protected me. I approached HR to make a case that what was happening was wrong, not just to me, but to everyone. I made the case that the situation of Mike being the executioner created a hostile work environment, and the fact that I had gotten his attempts to fire me thrown out proved that he was not only hostile, but was actively toxic. That it was against the law to discriminate on age, disability, and a myriad of other arguments. I was told that there was nothing they could do. Mike was untouchable, and had the full support of the upper management in our building because he was saving a lot of money in voluntary redundancy payouts by firing the vulnerable. Legally, there might be a case, but it would have to go to a court system, and not through HR unless I had an example of him being hostile and abusive. The person I spoke to was very sympathetic, and he suggested I look into some things related to job opportunities that were coming up. He mentioned that many of them were in managerial positions because a new type of roaming manager had been introduced. These were very needed and weren't getting much interest. Think substitute teacher, where a manager gets sent all around the country at the drop of a hat. It didn't occur to me instantly, but weeks later as I sat at work listening to Mike talk about his family, it clicked into place and my plan began to take form. Instead of making a complaint, I gave a glowing review and had several others do the same. If we couldn't get the man fired for his actions, we would get him promoted into a job that he couldn't take. The managers in our area were not even being considered for transfers because they lacked the training and qualifications to be managers anywhere else. Our reviews might just push him over the edge into getting a promotion, and since roaming managers were being sought, the two should dovetail nicely. We didn't give the reviews to our management, but directly higher up the food chain, way above anyone that ever dealt with our area of the business. Each of us mentioned that Mike had done an amazing job of sorting out problems, etc., had great management skills and an in-depth knowledge of procedure. Then we sat back and waited. A few months went by with nothing happening, and I thought the attempt had failed. But then we came into Mike losing his mind. He was shouting at the shift manager, his boss, about how he wasn't being given a choice. Turns out the higher management had gotten our reviews, looked into his record, and decided he was a perfect fit for the roaming manager position, and since they were in the process of getting rid of managers in our area, they insisted that Mike be pushed into it. Mike had of course tried to refuse the promotion, as was his right, but the higher management made it a choice of accept the promotion or be demoted back to peon. Mike had a family and couldn't just uproot them whenever the company needed him elsewhere, and a demotion with a pay cut back into the workforce of people who despised him, and that were being slowly culled was just as bad. So he asked for voluntary redundancy instead, and was accepted. His last day he went berserk, shouting and swearing about how badly the company had treated him after all he had done. I was unfortunately absent for it, but got a play-by-play and loved every second of it. Since I was told explicitly that I couldn't get him punished or fired, I got him a promotion he couldn't accept instead. 3. This happened about 4 or so years ago. I used to work as a cook at a dine-in restaurant of a truck stop. The lack of leadership by the restaurant management bred an atmosphere of being able to get away with just about anything among the employees, including how we interacted with the customers. My co-workers quickly learned I preferred to work than gossip, and even more quickly regretted the rare time or two they would try to get me involved in some drama. As most of them didn't like my sarcastic wit, they would let me be. I pretty much was back in the kitchen most of the time and didn't have to usually deal with our guests, but would be out front from time to time, usually on my way to or from the restroom, and did get to know many of our regulars. There were all kinds of truck drivers, the ones who were cool and fun to talk with, the flirts, the politically opinionated, every once in a while an occasional creep who had to be dealt with. All walks of life of drivers graced our establishment, and for the most part, no problems. Then there would be the drivers who, no matter what you did, were just outright jerks, rude to the staff, complaining about everything, and I mean everything. The weather, the repair shop, the music playing on the intercom, the showers, the price of diesel, the cost of items in the store, which was a separate department from the restaurant, the truck parking, all things that we had absolutely no control over, and hey, guys, we're just here to serve you food, okay? Yeah, it would get a little tedious listening to the whiners. So whenever I happened to spot the few habitual verbal offenders sitting out front, I would take the back way around to the ladies' room. Like I said, I don't care for gossip or drama. So I'm working the grow line. It's a somewhat slow afternoon, being middle of the week. The front counter is about half full with drivers sitting around chatting and eating, when one of our regular jerks comes in. Now this particular regular jerk was a special breed, the kind I refer to as not happy unless they're watching the world burn. This guy took being a jerk to the next level, never wanted to socialize with the other drivers, never tipped the servers. Always got his food to go. Yes, he would every single time open the container to inspect his order, grumble and make a snide comment. Would get the same thing every time, a club sandwich with fries. And for whatever reason, he would stick his head around the corner of the server line to see who was cooking before ordering, even though he would get the same thing every single time. Out of the corner of my eye, I see this driver peeking at me for a moment before he disappears from sight. Knowing what is coming, I go ahead and start the order. Now, the club sandwich we made was of the triple-decker variety. 3 slices of bread, ham, turkey, bacon, mayo, lettuce, tomato, and cheese, which, upon assembly, was held together with frill picks, very long toothpicks, with colored plastic frills on the end, and cut into quarters. Sure enough, the ticket pops up in my printer a couple minutes later. As I had gotten a head start, the sandwich is already laid out on my cutting board, and I'm waiting for the bacon and fries to finish cooking. I set up the to-go box and reach for the pan with the frill picks, only to discover that there are none. No surprise, honestly. The other cooks aren't exactly known for keeping up with the line stocking, so I go over to the storage room to get some. We are out. Completely. There isn't one single frill pick in the place. Oh, shit goes through my mind. Walking back to the line, I quickly brainstorm what to do. Realize that if I'm careful, I can cut the assembled sandwich and lay it in the box with the fries in such a way it will not fall apart. Pleased with myself and my idea, I finish putting the order together and place the closed container in the pass-through window for the server to bag up. As I have no other orders at that moment, I decide to text my general manager, who is scheduled in later in the day, about the frill pick situation and to ask if he can stop and pick some up on his way in. Before I can hit send, I hear a bellow from down the server line. "What the hell is this?" Immediately on alert, I step around the server line to see Mr. World-Class Jerk glaring at me. He repeats his question, so I ask, "What's the problem?" "Why are there no frill picks in my sandwich?" he demands to know. My reply is matter of fact, because we're currently out. Can't you frickin' order right? Why can't you do your damn job? Crossing my arms, I quirk an eyebrow and flatly reply, that is my general manager who does the ordering, not me. That I wasn't even aware we were out of frill picks until just now. The server is standing nervously off to the side. She's waiting to see what goes down. Mr. World-Class Jerk inhales, sputters a little, then spits out, "Well, I can't eat this like it is without the frill picks to hold it together. Not while I'm driving." He thrusts the box into the server's hands. "I want each sandwich section wrapped so it doesn't fall apart." Then, muttering under his breath, he steps back out front as the server scurries towards me. She hands me the box. I turn, walk past the grill into the back kitchen, and to the prep table, setting the box down next to the dispenser. Open the lid. You want your sandwich wrapped. You got it. Each individual section. Carefully, lovingly wrapped. In a 4-foot-long sheet of 18-inch wide food service grade saran wrap. Placing the sandwich back into its box, I walk back up to the server line and handed it to my coworker. She takes it out front. I see her hand it to this jerk, who proceeds to open the lid. He must have been satisfied because he closed the container and exited the restaurant. Walking back onto the grill line, I finish sending my text to my boss, and wonder how long it will be before the fallout from my malicious compliance hits. It never did. I don't know if he ever called to complain to my boss. I certainly didn't hear about it. Though we never saw that driver come into the restaurant again. 4. After graduating college, I worked for about 6 months as a cashier at a local branch of a chain sandwich shop. Mostly, it was a great job. Customers were mostly polite, my coworkers were friendly and helpful, and I genuinely believed in the company's products. Even my bosses were pretty great, except for one. We'll call him the Jerk. The Jerk was belligerent, vindictive, nitpicky, and pretty much an awful boss in every way a boss can be awful. He had the type of shitty no excuses policy that defined excuse as literally anything besides, "Yes sir, of course sir." I could go on and on about all the different ways he was terrible, but this story is about one specific flavor of his awfulness. During our shifts, each employee had a certain section of the store they were assigned to keep clean in addition to their duties. The cashier's section was the front counters and displays, and the coffee kiosk. I don't know if it was officially the manager's job, but as long as I worked there, whoever was the shift manager always took care of the outside patio area. Except for the Jerk. At first, he would just say things to me like, "I'm really busy right now, could you clean the patio?" Which was fine. Part of the job description stated that if you had free time and the manager asked you to do something extra, you did it. He was well within his rights. But one day, he suddenly started asking me why I was shirking my duties by not keeping the patio clean. After all, the patio was part of my section. It wasn't, and never had been. I asked the other cashiers, and they all agreed they'd never been told anything about the patio being part of the cashier section. I didn't mind helping out with the patio if my other cashier duties were done, but it irked me that he'd taken something extra I was doing to be helpful, and turned it into something I was neglecting my duties if I didn't do. It felt like a bait and switch, and I felt cheated. The bigger problem, though, was that keeping the patio clean through my entire shift was a huge pain for me as a cashier. In the afternoons, I was often the only one at the counter, and customers would trickle in with a few minutes between each group. This meant that I was constantly having to run back and forth between the patio and the register, which confused customers and made it hard to get any actual work done on the patio. One day, when this was particularly bad, the Jerk came up front and started asking me why I hadn't cleaned the patio. I started to explain that I kept having to come back inside to serve customers, but he cut me off. I don't remember his exact words, but it was something along the lines of, "That's no excuse. Cleaning the patio is your job. Now go outside and do your job. Don't come back inside until the patio is clean." That last sentence was music to my ears. I assured him that of course I would do exactly as he said, went outside and started cleaning. A few minutes later, a family walked past me through the front doors into the store. Through the large front window I watched them stand, confused, in front of the register. There was no one at it to serve them. The Jerk had gone back into his office to attend to his oh-so-important manager duties. I continued to clean the patio. A few minutes later, another family came in and joined the first, standing confused and now annoyed in front of the counter. At this point, the jerk must have noticed them on the security camera, because he came out of his office and started ringing them up. Then came another set of customers and another. The jerk was at the register, so he had to serve them. He was now being forced to cover my job because I was too busy doing his. I finished cleaning the patio and came inside. The jerk immediately tore into me, asking where I had been, why I wasn't at the counter. Couldn't I see there were customers? I put on my most innocent smile. But you told me not to come back inside until I'd finished cleaning the patio. I assumed that meant you would take care of serving customers, since I couldn't possibly be in two places at the same time. He just glared at me for the longest moment, then mumbled something about how I should have known what he meant, and I was never to pull a stunt like that again, and shuffled back to his office. Not much of a victory in the grand scheme of things, but seeing the momentary flash of panic in his eyes, as he realized his do-as-I-say, no-excuses policy had backfired, had me giddy for the rest of the day. 5. During the dot-com boom in the late 90s, I became somewhat well known for my expertise with a now somewhat obsolete networking technology. I ended up getting heavily recruited by a big telecom firm in Denver to run the technical side of a huge networking project they had underway. After multiple phone interviews, I was invited out for the big in-person sit-down, a 2-day affair where I met with the big dogs, other techies, HR, etc. It was a pretty killer opportunity. Took the trip. First day of meetings went great. I felt it was a great match, etc. I did sense there was some tension between two groups over network architecture. Turned out that was one of the reasons they were bringing in someone more senior who could finalize the approach and get the project moving. That was fine, all part of the job, whatever. Got wined and dined after the first day and definitely feeling like the job was a match and that I'd be moving to Denver. Went in the second day, and after another round of interviews, the division head takes me to lunch. That's when it all blew up. While we were at lunch, the firm's senior management canned the entire project and fired every person associated with it. Apparently, there was a huge internal political war going on. This project was ground zero for the big battle, and this division just lost. We get back from lunch, and the manager escorts me to HR, where we're going to sit down and go over their offer. Instead, he's told what's going on and that he's out of a job along with everyone else on the project. At this point, I was told to leave. No apologies. It was just shitty luck for me. WTF. Okay then. I'm gone. I get back to the hotel and there's a voicemail from me asking me to call the HR people. I'm pissed, but I call. They tell me they've had to cancel my return ticket and that I'd need to pay for the hotel myself now. But that if I was submit an expense report, they might be able to get me a check. There's a second voicemail from the front desk asking me to provide a credit card for the stay. And then I get a call on my cell phone from the car rental company, which I didn't answer. Turns out they also wanted my credit card. Fuck that! I called the airline and they said that my reservation had indeed been cancelled. But they also acknowledged that my reservation was paid for using a fully refundable ticket, which I was holding, and which back in the 90s was essentially as good as cash. Said they wouldn't know for certain if I could board until I showed up at the counter with the physical ticket. Great, just great. I'm on the hook for several thousand in airfare, nice hotel, and rental car after taking several days of vacation from my job for this interview. I don't think so. Here's a revenge. I packed my bags and loaded up the rental car, left the keys in the hotel room door. Drove the rental car back to Dallas, stayed overnight in Amarillo, dropped the rental at the Hertz lot at DFW Airport, took their shuttle to the terminal I'd left my car at, and drove home. Over the next few months, I got several nasty phone calls from their HR and accounting departments, demanding I pay them back for the trip, including paying for the $700 drop-off fee for the car. Never answered them, of course, just let them go to voicemail. Eventually got a demand letter from their legal department. Paid an attorney a nominal fee to send them a demand for compensation and threaten a lawsuit letter. Never heard from the firm again. The ticket itself was still valid. I ended up selling it to a friend at a big discount, and he was able to use it. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, number 44. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Well, I've actually lost track of how long we've been in lockdown. Well, we're in, as I record this, we're in April. It's probably going to go on for a while longer. In fact, I expect, joking completely aside, I expect it'll go on so long that ultimately, when we're not, when we're all okay, that it will change the way we do things. I would not be surprised if schools go to online classes for part of the week, and they're only actually in the school for maybe a few days, maybe 3 days, and do online classes 2 days of the week. Wouldn't surprise me. We'll see. And a lot more people. I was getting like home deliveries for groceries just as a matter of convenience sometimes. If it looked like the weather was bad, if I wasn't well, or if I was just busy with work. Like the weekend is always, like Thursday, Friday, they're always my busiest work days. So if I had a lot to do, then I'd quickly do an online shop the night before, the day before. And then I'd get to work and I'd let my groceries come, they'd be convenient. Of course, now there is the process of, at least for me there is, I like to wipe everything down before I put it away. It's just a habit I've gotten into. But yeah, I expect a lot more people, now that they know they can get things delivered, will keep getting them delivered afterward. That's fine, that's kind of a non-thing. From what I'm hearing, though, is people are being quite kind when you are out and about. People are being civilized, perhaps being kinder than before, which kind of gives you a little faith in the human race. You see so many things that knock your faith in humanity, and then a crisis like this happens, and it tends to, well, it lets our ugly side hang out as well, certainly. But I think it lets the best in us shine. Okay, I think I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.